Grab a cup of tea or a glass of wine and tune in for Inspired Conversations with publisher Linda Joy. On Tuesdays at 2 p.m. Eastern, Linda creates sacred space for leading female luminaries, empowering authors, heart-centered female entrepreneurs, coaches, and healers. A soulful venue where guests openly share the fears and obstacles they've overcome, wisdom and lessons learned, and the personal journey that led them to the transformational work they do in the world. Inspired Conversations to empower you on your path to authentic, soulful living.
Welcome to Inspired Conversations. I'm your host, Mindset Elevation Coach, Intentional Living Guide, Linda Joy. You know, I can't believe it's been 8 years that I have been bringing my global audience these sacred conversations, inspiring conversations with women entrepreneurs, coaches, healers, women who have a powerful message to share. And the reason I love bringing them to you is I can remember the days in my life where I felt that I was doing everything alone. And so my vision for this radio show was to bring you women who are doing transformational work in the world, because that could be the one person that could change the trajectory of your life. And today's conversation, we're talking with Leisa Reid, and we're talking about speaking. And I know some of you, as I used to do, like, what? Like, that's my biggest fear. Well, I'm going to tell you, Leisa has a soulful way of connecting and guiding you into using your voice as a speaker. And in this episode, she's going to unveil the soul-fulfilling path to business growth through public speaking. And Leisa is the founder of Get Speaking Gigs Now, and she's the CEO of the International Speaker Network, with a mission to transform public speaking into a soul-fulfilling business growth strategy. She's your go-to talk doula. Oh my God, I love that. Helping you create your talk and secure bookings for a lifetime. She has rocked, are you ready for this? Over 600 stages, authored 7 books, and graced the airwaves as a podcast host. Leisa Reid brings unparalleled expertise to the table, and you can learn more at getspeakinggigsnow.com. Leisa, I'm so excited to have you here.
Oh, so excited to be here, Linda.
I always love to ask my guests, because I always notice there's a red thread through every woman that's been on my show over the last years. And that thread is their own journey led them to the work they're doing in the world, especially for us spiritual entrepreneurs, conscious entrepreneurs. Is that the same for you?
Absolutely. I think if we look back, the older we get, we look back at all the dominoes and they're just laid up perfectly. We didn't know it at the time, but I definitely feel that has been my journey.
So I know that as you're the CEO of the International Speaker Network, take us back to those days when you first had that vision, when all that first unfolded. Was you already speaking yourself when you had that vision?
It's interesting. I started speaking. Well, if I even back up a little further, I was in I was in an executive leadership position at a university. And I knew that I could do that job forever, whether it was at that university or another one, with my hands tied behind my back and blindfolded. Like, I knew I could do that and it would provide a great living for many, many years to go. But I knew that my heart was not in it. I just did not feel aligned. And so I started opening up and manifesting different opportunities. Like, what is this next thing? What is this other thing I'm supposed to be doing? And I joined a program for facilitation training and personal development. And at the end of that program, they said, well, we're looking to hire people into the community, into the business. And I said, oh, that's great for other people. But I didn't consider myself in that category. But lo and behold, that's what happened. And I was already madly in love with the work. And they said, this is what you're going to be doing for us. You get to give a presentation around mindset, how the mind works, how how do we create actions intentionally, and you get to go teach that to a bunch of people and invite them to our work. So I was hired basically to speak for business development. And that first year, I booked 83 speaking engagements in my local area. And halfway through that journey, because it was a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, not going to lie, halfway through that journey, I thought, I think this would be easier if I was surrounded by other people doing the same kind of thing, trying to get out there speaking. So I started my group back in 2013. I think we had like 4 people there or something like that, and a cat maybe. And just started. And I would we still meet on the first Tuesday of the month from 1 to 3 Pacific. Like we still meet on the same day over 10 years later, except for now we meet virtually. And now we have hundreds of people.
I love that. And I just love the synchronicities, don't you? Like if, you're right, when we look back, we were always being led to exactly where we need to be,
Yes.
or where we're meant to be, I should say. So I got to ask because I know so many people, the moment you say speaking, whether it's virtually or on stage, it's like a freeze thing. I have clients that like they freeze. They're like, oh no, no, no. I can do podcasts, I can do this, but to be, I guess, center stage is the energy. Do you come across that?
I do. I call it speaker's kryptonite. And I think it's pretty common because not because speaking is scary, but because childhood is a hotbed for humiliation sometimes.
Yes.
And we have an experience as a kid which could come in so many different flavors. It could be, but experiences as a kid where you're speaking, you're communicating, you're sharing your voice in some manner, and it doesn't go well. And this could mean at the family dinner table. It could mean in the classroom when maybe you were required to read out loud and some kids snickered, or it could be so innocent. It could be traumatic. It could be all those things. And the body just says, nope, we're not doing that anymore. That does not feel good. So we're never going to do that again. Or if we do, it's going to be such a horrible experience. Right. And then we grow up and we think, well, I'm scared of public speaking. But then we also start working with making an impact in the world and affecting people and having a purpose and wanting to help more people and serve more people. Then we have to think, maybe I need to reevaluate that old fear of public speaking and unpack that. Am I having the right conversation with myself? Where did that come from? When did that start? Is that true anymore? And our message starts to get bigger than our fear.
Yeah. So funny that you said that. Like you just brought back a memory because let's see, I've had Aspire for 18 years. So probably about 15 years ago in a meditation, I downloaded a message that sat on my tape to my computer for over a decade. And it said, my dreams are bigger than any false fears that will arise.
Yes.
And I've shared that with my clients for years because they're like, how did you go from welfare mom to having 6 media brands? And I'm like, here's the quote still taped there. And I'd take it off and show them. I said, one step at a time. And speaking is one of them. I've done workshops. I've been the keynote in front of 400 people, but it was because of what you just said. I was petrified. But even 20 years ago, I made my commitment to being of service bigger than my ego's fears. Doesn't mean I
Yes.
wasn't afraid. And so that's what you're speaking to, right? Like we have to make our mission bigger than those false illusions in that small little voice of inside.
Yeah. And it's also about having the right conversation with yourself. And that's so individual and custom to each person because, it probably started from some experience or experiences over the years when you were younger. And possibly that conversation hasn't been had. It's more of like, "Oh, I'm scared of public speaking. I don't wanna do that," or "I've imposter syndrome." I'll hear that a lot. And I'm like, "Well, what is imposter syndrome really?" I mean, that's a very blanket impersonal term. I'm not against the term. I'm just saying it's not right. You're not having the right conversation with yourself. It's more of like, okay, why might I be having imposter syndrome? What do I mean by that? What happens to me when I think, oh, I'm going to get on stage? What physical sensations, what thoughts, what feelings, what do I do when? All those things. That's when we start to have the right conversations, just getting to know ourselves on that different level and then going, okay, so what else is true? Well, what else is true is I've, had XYZ certifications. I've helped hundreds of thousands of people. I've written a book. I've been on a podcast, whatever those wins are. I actually have helped people. Now we're starting to have a more mature conversation with ourselves.
Yeah, because that little, child isn't running the show, right? You're talking to the higher self instead of the smaller self that we all have. And so I love that. So in the work you do, either through the International Speaker Network or the work they do with you through Get Speaking Gigs Now, is that something you cover in your offerings to help those who come into those communities heal and work through those fears?
I do if it's required. It's one of the tools in the toolbox. I had a client recently who had a successful career in finance, and we had created her talk. I call it Get Your Talk Ready to Rock. So we figured out a way that was going to be in alignment for her to have this talk, but she was still having a block, and she said, I'm stuck. And I know she's capable. Like my clients are like yours, confident, purpose driven, intelligent, really amazing people with integrity. But when we get stuck, it's like, okay, then why are we stuck? That's interesting. Why is this intelligent, confident, driven woman stuck? What's going on here? And that's when we need to go, okay, let's back it out. Let's talk through what's going on. It's typically something from the past that's showing up in the future. But it doesn't always come up. A lot of times I have clients who most of my clients tell me, I cannot wait to speak. I want that microphone in my hand, virtual or otherwise. I I know I'm really good at this. I've always gotten feedback. I just don't know how to put it all together. I'm not sure how it works with business.
Oh, good. Yeah, and I think that's a big one because I have clients like that who are great at speaking. They have no qualms about doing it live or virtual, but they don't know the strategy.
Right.
Okay, I think that's great, and I love that you cover that. And we're going to take our first break, and I want to invite everyone learn more about Lisa's offerings at getspeakinggigsnow.com. And also, when you get to the website, she has some free tips for you. And you'll see that right on the homepage. Or you can also visit getspeakinggigsnow.com/tips. We'll be back in a moment.
Connecting you with the best of the conscious minds in the world. Om Times Radio. IOM FM.
Inspiration for a woman's soul. Aspire Magazine, inspiring and supporting women on the path of self-discovery. Claim your free digital subscription today, which includes access to thousands of dollars of personal development bonus gifts from Team Inspiration partners. Claim your Aspire Magazine subscription today at subscribetoaspire.com.
Consistently attract soulmate clients, begin showing up on brand, monetizing on your calling. Welcome all spiritual coaches, leaders, healers, light workers, and practitioners to a show that turns you on in your business and amplifies your magnetism. I'm host, catalyst, and spiritual business coach Rosalind Fung, and I'm here to journey with you into the juicy and help you discover where the real gaps are. Ignite your mindset and soul with strategies and systems as each episode takes you to the sweet spot that activates your soulgasmic business by tuning in on Tuesdays at 10 a.m. Mountain. Join me for your light language activation and let's magnetize and monetize.
Your conscious lifestyle on steroids. Om Times Radio. IOM FM.
Welcome back, my friend. You're listening to Inspired Conversations. With me today is Leisa Reid, the founder of Get Speaking Gigs Now. And we're talking about using speaking to as a business strategy to grow your business, to elevate your expert status. And I want to talk about that one part because you just mentioned virtual or in person. So in both your organizations, what you teach can be translated either way. Like some have no desire to travel and be speaking, but they're always interested in virtual. So can you explain the difference and if there is a big difference in the strategy between the two?
I can. And it's so interesting because my book came out January 2020. And I thought, oh my gosh, once March 2020 hit when we had our pandemic, I thought, oh no, do I have to change everything? And to go back and read and think, is anything here different? And I had also launched my speakers training academy online course. So I had a moment of, panic. But when I reviewed everything, I thought it's actually fine. It's very, very similar. The differences are just slight. For example, and I used to do 99% of my speaking in person. Now I flip the other way. Now I do 99% virtual. The one thing that I think is the biggest difference is all the stuff you need to bring when it's in person. And you might want to bring physical copies of handouts or banners or sign up pages or, things for a marketing table, something like that. With virtual, you don't need to worry about any of those things. So it kind of eliminates a lot of the checklists. Like you don't have to worry about pens, you don't have to bring business cards, you don't need to bring a banner, all those things. You don't need to worry about the tech not working because you already have everything all set up at your house or your office. And so for me, virtual is like a walk in the park compared to in-person speaking. And I used to speak in person all the time, and I live in Southern California. So I was driving to, different counties, usually like an hour, and I like to get there early. So it's funny, virtual now, I just click the button and then I click the button when I'm done. And I can go about my day and have another meeting right away. So I know this is going to sound like a sales pitch for virtual speaking. I'm just saying a lot of people confess to me that, well, and I don't know if you hear this, Linda. Well, virtual speaking doesn't work. You can't connect with people. It's not the same. I want to speak in person. I'll hear those kind of objections a lot. And it's different. It's slightly different, sure. But when you learn how to manage the audience and facilitate in a certain way that creates connection, whether you're in person or virtual, you can be very, very influential and you can affect change and you can have a deep, meaningful experience either way, either if you're virtual or in person.
I love that. And I agree completely. The first 3 years that Aspire was born, so 2006 to 2009, it was a print regional, and I held huge women's events, 3 days, 65 speakers, keynote. And then when I went digital, and of course I would do live workshops, etc. When I went virtual with the magazine, I ended all of that. So for 15 years, I've grown a vibrant global community using speaking through video and audio, right? It's about the connection, and you nailed it. It isn't about the topic. I think it's about how you make them feel when they are with you. So I love that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I love that you said about the connection. The other thing you mentioned too, and I have a lot of people ask, so when you say you booked like 600 or any speaker books, speaking spots outside, not virtual, were those paid speaking spots? Were those you speaking because it was a business strategy, so you would speak at no cost, knowing that you're reaching that audience to bring them into the business?
Yes, that's more my strategy, although there are quite a few different strategies. This is probably one of the most common questions that I get because a lot of times we think, I want to be a paid speaker. Well, I also want you to be a paid speaker. And I also encourage people to expand what paid speaker means.
Yes.
I want you to I call it, instead of saying paid, I just say, let's monetize every opportunity we can. Let's increase the odds of you monetizing every opportunity, because paid speaking is not the right necessarily fit. Paid keynote speaking is not the right fit for every single speaker or every single business model. For example, I have a client who speaks to medical organizations and healthcare organizations. So they have big associations and conventions, and she was a high level executive in that arena. Paid speaking makes sense for her business model. And it also makes sense for her true personal desires of what she wants to do for a living. She loves speaking more than she loves having a coaching business, even though she coaches and trains as well. But that's her front burner desire. So then for her, that's her strategy. Now, if I have someone who's never been in corporate, who really wants to build maybe their life coaching business, for example, that's a different arena. Maybe she's going for entrepreneurs, he or she, I know this is mostly for women. So maybe her target ideal clients are women entrepreneurs. Those are typically going to be easier, the speaking engagements that are not having a speaker fee, but that you can go and ideally attract your ideal clients. That's going to be a quicker way for her to monetize and a more easy way for her to get bookings. So I think of speaking as like a deck of cards where you have the same deck of cards, but what game are we playing? What are the rules? How do we win, right? Because that would make sense. If you're playing a game, you would want to know how you would win the game, how you can best increase your odds, and also have an enjoyable experience. So it depends on the person.
And I love that you share that because other than my paid keynotes way back when, I did a lot of free too. They were for me, even before I was tying it into a business strategy, which came a lot later. It was more for me to get comfortable, me create community. And I love cultivating sacred community. I did them at no cost. And at first, I was just speaking at them. I was using them to hone my skills, to hone my comfort level. And then I started making offers, right? And and now, of course, we do it virtual. I do it virtually, and many of my clients do too. I do have some that I think they have done some local workshops, but mostly the work I do with them is all about virtual. And you can make an impact virtually with speaking, as you know, from all the extraordinary speakers that you support. So let's talk about that. If someone wants to become a speaker or use public speaking as a marketing strategy, what do you recommend they do to get started?
One of the first things that I always say is you need to be ready to say yes. And that's like your first litmus test. Like, okay, if somebody asked me to speak tomorrow, what would I need? Can I say yes? Like, am I ready? Or do I need to do something to get ready? And you can even imagine, like, you get invited to a big fancy party tomorrow. Do you have a dress? Do you have the shoes? Do you have the jewelry? Do you have the ability to put makeup on and get your hair? Like, are you ready to say yes at a moment's notice? I'm not saying this is going to happen. I'm just saying, well, if you want things to happen, you need to be ready to say yes. So you might need to really define your talk. That's why I call it get your talk ready to rock. A lot of times people will confess to me before they become my clients, like, well, I've been thinking about my talk for a long time. I've been working on it, but I'm still not sure. I'm still putting it together. And I think, well, how long have you been working on it? And they're like, oh, I've been thinking about it for like a year now. And I said, well, is it written down on any, is it, whether it's on a piece of paper or digital, like, is it written anywhere? No, it's just in my head. Okay, well, all right. Do you have slides? No. Okay. Do you have an offer? No. So these are signs just telling me you're not ready to say yes. You're still dreaming about it, which is beautiful. But we want to now move it into action. Take that dream and actually put it into action so that if they ask you, you're saying, "Yep, put me in, coach." And I have found that when people, and you probably find this too, Linda, when somebody decides to join my Speakers of Training Academy, quite often they will get asked to speak even when they haven't done anything yet. even when they haven't had one session, one mastermind class, they haven't looked at anything. And they're like, oh my gosh, Lisa, I just got asked to speak at such and such a place. I'm like, exactly. Because now the universe is saying, oh, this person's ready. They're serious. They're ready to do it. The portal is open. And it's unexplainable, but it's amazing when that happens.
Oh, I believe that. I live my life through those principles. And when we make the energetic yes,
Mm-hmm.
the universe aligns and says, now I'll reveal the next step of the path.
Absolutely.
But it's always waiting for us to take the step before it reveals the next step of the path.
Yeah, and it's like anything, like you're going to be more confident when you're going to emit a certain energy when you're ready to say yes, because when you have clarity on, what's that call to action, what's that offer going to be, when you have your slides all done, even if you don't use them, if you have your speaker sheet done, even if no one ever sees it, if you have, like all these things that you have your bio, you have your intro, you have your headshots, you have all these things, your homework is done. You're kind of like when the teacher asks you a question, you're the one who could raise your hand and say, I know the answer. That's what we're going for. That confidence. And that's contagious confidence.
I love that. So what's another step?
So the other thing is, well, I mentioned it a little bit ago, is having that clear call to action. That's one of the things I'll work on with them first in the Get Your Talk Ready to Rock session, because you'd be surprised how many purpose-driven, really intelligent, confident women have a hard time making an offer. They feel like they don't want to be too salesy. They don't want to feel uncomfortable. They don't want to take, and so we have to get clarity on that, and so that we can be in alignment with that offer. And then the other thing is really getting clear on what I call the speaking avatar. What is your what is your ideal audience? Where do you think they're hanging out? Where are you going to point your focus? Because the good news is there's so many speaking opportunities, and the bad news is there's so many speaking opportunities. We need to make sure you are clear on where you're going and why, and does it make sense for your business? And once that happens, all of a sudden the blinders just fall off, and you'll be tripping over speaking engagements. It's kind of amazing. I'm not going to lie.
I love this. So be ready to say yes, clear call to action, and ideal audience.
Yeah.
And I think that's so important, because if you don't know your ideal audience, then you're saying yes to speaking gigs that attract those who you aren't aligned to work with
serving.
you. So I call it aligned list building, because to me it isn't about the number, it's about the alignment.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I teach my clients. We're going to take another break, Lisa, but I'm loving the strategies and tips that you're sharing. We're going to be back in a moment, my friends. In the meantime, visit getspeakinggigsnow.com. We'll be back shortly.
The best of the holistic, spiritual, and conscious world. Times Radio. IOM FM.
Your worth is not determined by the number on the scale. You are enough right now, exactly as you are. If you're like many midlife women, you've thought, if I could just reach my ideal weight, I'd be so much happier. What we're really craving is our own love and acceptance, and Sarah Haas is that guide for your journey. Sarah is a women's weight release expert and body love coach, and walks alongside midlife women ready to say yes to self-care, self-compassion, and body love, so they can become the healthy, vibrant, and unapologetically confident women they're here to be. Her holistic approach integrates nutrition, body movement, and self-care to nurture body, mind, and spirit. Visit sarahhaaswellness.com for supportive resources, programs, and more for midlife women ready to reclaim their health.
If I could be you,
and you could be me,
for just 1 hour,
if you could find a way
to get inside
each other's mind,
walk a mile in my shoes.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
We've all felt left out, and for some, that feeling lasts more than a moment. We can change that. Learn how at belongingbeginswithus.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
Host your show on IOM FM, the radio network of Times Media, one of the more recognized brand names in the conscious community, and is backed by the extensive marketing reach of Times. Hosting a show on FM immediately connects you with our extensive dedicated community. The best of the holistic, spiritual, and conscious world. Times Radio. FM.
You're listening to Inspired Conversations. Today we're talking about some of Leisa Reid's secrets to securing consistent speaking engagement. She just shared some tips, including how to get started, being ready to say yes, a clear call to action, knowing your ideal audience. So let's say they have that all set, and maybe they're working with you to get that all set. Where would they start looking for speaking gigs, especially virtual?
Right. So there's so many different ways that I would answer that question depending on who's in front of me. Because one of the biggest mistakes I see people make is just go right to Google or ChatGPT or their favorite AI program and just punch in, speaking engagements. And man, you are going to go down a rabbit hole like nobody's business. if that's what your strategy is. Not to say we wouldn't use it as a tool, but it can feel really overwhelming and time sucking. So one of the things that I like to do is narrow it down. I think of geographical location is a good place to start. Even if you're doing virtual, just think of it this way: local, national, international. And this is going to depend on the person who's going through this process. You might think local. Well, if you live in a town where there's not really a lot of commerce happening, that might not work for you. But maybe you think national, maybe there's a state nearby. If you're in the US, you may have the ability to drive to different states really easily. So that means national, outside of your state. International, that's for people who are like, I want to have a retreat in Bali, or I want to go travel, I want to go all these other places, or for whatever reason, maybe you speak another language. One of my clients speaks English and Spanish. So that person created a strategy that evolved virtually, but to Spanish speaking and English speaking business opportunities. So that will help you narrow it down. If you're going virtual and say you live in a metropolitan area, I live in, like I said, Southern California. So there's lots of commerce happening. And that means there's lots of networking groups, business groups, women's groups. I speak to women entrepreneur groups all the time. There's lots of local, national, and international groups. So you can start that way. If you're taking that example, that would be one way that I would start.
I love that. And I love how you said about breaking it down, local, national, international, because as you were sharing that, places were popping in my mind.
Exactly.
Like here's what's so funny. Even local libraries, people don't think about, they're always looking for speakers.
Yep.
Everyone,
there's I call it finding treasure in your own backyard, whether it's virtual or otherwise. There's a lot of, if you think of like your normal city or even a big town, there's probably some local business groups, local networking groups, women's groups, things like that. And then if you just think, well, what about the town next door? What about, within an hour radius of where I live, what's going on? And all of a sudden you're like, well, I don't really have to look too far. Unless you live on a remote island, you don't have to look that far. And if you think of that as there's all the cities if we just say US, just US alone, all the cities and all the opportunities, all of those cities also have local little grassroots entrepreneurial business type groups. And then that's, again, disclaimer, if that is your ideal target market. That was just an example. There's other examples, but that would be for that example.
and one of the other things too, and it just crossed my mind, for those, I have a lot of spiritual life coaches, holistic healers, therapists, and yoga centers are always looking for workshops. Holistic centers, a spiritual shop just asked me to speak. They're always looking for workshop presenters, and a lot of times they do charge a fee and you get a percentage, and then you even invited to make an offer at the end. So there's so many fun ways to play. So let's talk about how they get booked for speaking gigs, especially let's stay with the virtual just because I know so many. So what are some of the ways they could get booked for speaking gigs?
Well, one of the ways that I started was I started cold calling. This was back 2013. And when I say cold calling, it meant email, cold emailing, cold reaching out. I found that to be less than desirable. One of the, I would call it a soul sucking activity.
Yeah,
Not
and
everybody
now
feels that way, but
I and it's not received well on the other end either.
it can be, but it's just a tough one. It's one of those you have to really like motivate yourself, and then it can all of a sudden get put down at the bottom of the pile of the things you'd rather just go clean the bathroom than do it, right? So we don't want to have that. So that's one of the reasons I started the network back over 10 years ago. I thought there's got to be an easier way because I don't want to cold call the rest of my life. And it just didn't feel good. So I thought, what if I surrounded myself with other speakers who were doing the same thing I'm doing for the most part? And what if we referred each other? We're all doing our thing separate, but when we come together, we are collaborating and sharing when appropriate. Again, not in a forced way or in a required way, but in a free flowing, exchanging, like almost back to like the olden times of bartering. Like, well, you need this, I need that. Oh, cool, that works out. Everybody wins. And that's how we still do it. That's honestly how I still run my organization. But I call it the virtual handshake, like meet other speakers face to face virtually and get to know them and see, hey, are there some referral opportunities here for us? Can we play together? Because I haven't cold called for speaking in 9 years. And
Yeah.
that's what my wish is for everybody to have that, where you align yourself with strategic partners. I call them speaker soulmates. And I can explain that in a minute, but align yourself with those people because guess what? When you meet another speaker, they have all the contact information that you want, but you have to be willing to ask and give and have that reciprocal exchange that makes it so beautiful.
I love that. And I'm the creator of the feminine collaborative marketing
Yeah.
model. So that's why I was drawn to you. I'm like, oh, she gets it. And what I love, and I heard because you use the word give, it's like, the book, The Go Giver, it's like, give from your heart and support others, and it always comes back to you. Might
It
not
does.
come back in that moment, but like if you're at a meeting and you go, oh my God, I just spoke somewhere, and Lisa, you would be great for that. Let me make an introduction.
Yeah, and you can make it intentional with certain people and you can make it spontaneous with others.
Yeah.
And that's how I've managed to stay booked for so many years consistently. And that's what my wish is for anyone in our network. It doesn't have, I'm constantly saying this, it doesn't have to be that hard. This can be easy, but you just have to trust me. Like
Yeah.
kindness and generosity go so far, and the ability to receive as well. And I say that because a lot of women we are really good at giving, and we also want to be really good at receiving.
Yeah. And that's we could have a whole conversation on that topic. And it took me many years. I'm 62. So it took me many years to open to receive. And once I healed that story, my whole life and business went through, just soared. So one of the things before we go to the final break is you have Get Speaking Gigs now and International Speaker Network. What's the differences between the two in case someone's listening?
Sure. The International Speaker Network is an open space for anyone who is speaking in any capacity, whether you're just thinking about getting started or you're already, been around the block a few times. It's a safe place for you to meet your friends. I think of like we're all on the playground, find your friends, who are you going to play with? You're going to be learning, you're going to be connecting, you're going to be getting some business results in terms of introductions and connections. You're going to hear about podcasts that are happening. We have activities all designed around you getting out there more often. and being educated about it too. It's a low fee to join, it's a low monthly fee to be a member. So it's very reasonable, and I think a healthy part of any speaker's diet. For Get Speaking Gigs Now, my main program is the Speakers Training Academy. Sometimes we have a desire to speak, but we don't know what the next step is. We're got a lot of questions like, well, I'm not really sure what I should talk about. Is this okay? What speaking engagement should I be taking? Or maybe I've been doing it and it's not working. Something's wrong. Like I'm not moving as quick as I want. I don't want to make a bunch of mistakes. I just need some guidance, and your inner voice is telling you those things. That's more for the Speakers Training Academy, because sometimes we just need someone to take a look at our stuff and give us honest feedback and honest direction, and so that we can start to create that program that helps us get booked forever and feel confident on stage and feel certain about our choices. And that's what the Speakers Training Academy is for.
So that one's perfect for the person that doesn't have everything in place so that she can say yes.
Yes.
And help them get the clear call to action so that it aligns with their talk.
Absolutely.
Okay, so that's open. Is it open all the time that people can join?
I have open enrollment. I take 12 people at a time. So once a spot opens up, the next person can come in.
Okay, that's perfect. Is that URL speakerstrainingacademy.com?
It's not. What a great question. It's also at Get Speaking Gigs Now, and there's a tab for Speakers Training Academy, and they can book a call with me to talk about that.
Okay, so I want to clarify that, ladies. If you're interested in the Speakers Training Academy, you still go to getspeakinggigsnow.com and look for the tab and all that information. I know I'll be sharing this. I think it's powerful. And we're going to take our final break and come back for the last segment, and we'll talk about what the number one secret is to getting booked and staying booked as a speaker. We'll be right back, my friends. Again, check out getspeakinggigsnow.com. We'll be right back.
The best of the holistic, spiritual, and conscious world. Om Times Radio. IOM FM.
Your truest, deepest desires are calling you. The question is, will you answer the call? Former high-tech Fortune 500 leader Sharon Seberg knows how it feels to wear busyness as a badge of honor and to smother her dreams with the expectations of others. Walking away from her successful yet unfulfilling career, she chose to live a life connected to her intuitive wisdom and divine truth, and now lives a life of fulfillment, peace, and abundance. Today, Sharon is a neurotransformational coach, feminine power facilitator, and the visionary founder of the Soul Alignment Formula. She empathetically fuses cutting-edge neuroscience with intuitive coaching, supporting successful women to unlock their full potential so they can live a life of authenticity and freedom. Are you ready to excavate your deepest desires and bring them to life? Start by visiting SharonSeberg.com.
More than 24 million Americans have an autoimmune disorder, and that number continues to grow. I'm Sharon Saylor, and I'm one of those 24 million. To put that number in perspective, cancer affects about 9 million and heart disease up to 22 million. That's why I've brought together top experts and those thriving regardless of their diagnosis to bring you the latest, most up-to-date information. Join me, Sharon Saylor, Friday night, 7 p.m. Eastern, for the Autoimmune Hour on Life Interrupted Radio to find out how to live your life uninterrupted.
Hey, hon, what you doing with your phone? Taking pictures?
No. I'm asking it questions.
Like what?
Hey, Bobo, do flowers have best friends?
I'm sorry. I'm afraid I don't know that.
Hey, follow me. I want to show you something. Look, flowers do have best friends.
Whoa.
Some answers can only be found in nature. Discover the unsearchable. Visit discovertheforest.org to find a trail near you. Brought to you by the United States Forest Service and the Ad Council.
Free your mind with Om Times Radio. IOM FM.
Welcome back, my friend. You're listening to Inspired Conversations. I'm your host, Linda Joy. With me today is Leisa Reid, the founder of Get Speaking Gigs Now and the CEO of the International Speaker Network, the place you want to be if you have a deep desire to connect with other speakers, expand your network, and expand your knowledge. So, Lisa, what is the number one secret to getting booked and staying booked? You see, she had so many juicy strategies and insights. I'd love to learn more.
Well, I dropped a little clue earlier, and it's something that I call finding your speaker soulmate. We actually do this activity a couple times, three times a year at the International Speaker Network. And I'll explain what a speaker soulmate is. This happened to me organically. I found this amazing angel of a person who is still my speaker soulmate after over 10 years now. And we've been through it all. Her moving out of the state and and going through a pandemic, and we still are able to refer each other. So a speaker soulmate is somebody who speaks at a similar frequency as you. Meaning if you're just getting started, find someone else who's getting started. If you're a paid keynote speaker, you got to find another paid keynote speaker. The second thing is that someone that you know, like, and trust. I know that sounds really obvious, but it doesn't mean you need to have known them since you were in kindergarten. You might just meet them on a virtual Zoom meeting, maybe in the inspired living community, and you see their face and you just feel drawn to them. Like, get to know them. Can you trust them? You start to, just like dating, you're not going to get married on the first date. You're going to go to the movies, go to dinner. I mean this metaphorically, but have some meetings, see how it works out, give each other a few referrals. Do they show up? Are their core values aligned with your core values? Does it feel right? And you're developing that trust. And then the third thing is, and this is what people usually don't consider, do they speak to a similar audience as you, but they're not your competition? That makes it easy to refer because, say, Linda, if you and I are speaker soulmates and we both speak to women entrepreneur groups, but we don't offer the same thing, like we offer completely different types of programs, we might be potential speaker soulmates. And then wherever you speak, you might be willing to refer me and vice versa when it's appropriate. And when you set up this system, all of a sudden you've got this machine that's just working for you all the time, and you're working for it too. Like it's a beautiful symbiotic thing that happens, and all of a sudden it gets easier. You get the introductions to the people you need to meet, you get the phone calls back, you get the bookings, I mean, it's just like riding a bike, so easy.
I love
And
that.
it's a beautiful thing. Yeah.
And I love the phrase speaker soulmate.
Yeah.
And I love that you said aligned, like your soulmate should be someone that, I don't want to say level, but at that same experience. So then you can rise up together.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And then you've got your partners. And I think people sometimes want to have this quick fix, like a guarantee. And I get that. I'm guilty of that as well. I'm not saying I'm immune. But when you have these, if you think of it like a friendship, we have lots of friends, we have lots of people on our social media accounts. Like we now have thousands of people in our atmosphere. But when you really get honest with yourself, the close friends, your best friends, is maybe a handful, maybe five or less people. And I think of a speaker soulmate as in that category. And that means it's a really special relationship. And it's one that's going to be the most fruitful. So if you put that time and effort into those couple of relationships, all of a sudden it's a total game changer for your business.
Oh, I agree. I think, and I've been saying this for a long time, relationships are the new currency, right?
Yes.
It's how I've grown my business over the last 18 years. And I think you were on one of the calls that I held that, I believe so, that one of the women said she's been following me for 18 years. And I'm like, what? On my email list. That's relationship when people feel your intention, they feel your heart, but that takes nourishing.
Yeah.
So I'm so glad that you said that. It isn't about finding relationships going, what's in it for me? It's about nurturing it as much as you would want someone to nurture a relationship with you. Especially in business, I think it's so important to show up as a leader that gives and not just takes.
Absolutely. I've had recently and it seems like an influx of people who like, oh, I watch all your YouTube videos. Oh, I've been following you on Facebook. I've been getting your emails. I heard you on a podcast. And sometimes we, are tempted to, and I'm not talking about me in this scenario in this particular moment. I've in my past, yes, have like, oh, just going to give up. This isn't working. You don't know that it's not working. You're still putting that message out there consistently and doing what you love. It does pay off. It absolutely pays off. But sometimes you're going to know right away. Like in speaking, I like that because you can see the results right away. But sometimes you're not going to know until a little bit later, and that's okay.
Yeah. And I tell my clients that all the time. Like if they're on a call and they hear someone say that, I go, I want to take a moment. I want you to hear what she said. She's been following me for 18 years. She opens every email, but she finally just chose to invest. We never know where someone is, right? Our job is just to show up as our authentic self, serve, share our message, share our truth, share our offerings, and trust. This is my language now. Trust the universe is going to bring you exactly who you're meant to work with, all in divine timing. So I let the divine take care of the rest. I just show up and live my truth, my message with intention and integrity. And I just love how the magic happens when you do that.
Absolutely. That's why I knew I was drawn to you immediately.
Leisa and I, we connected, then we've been on some other calls together, and it was like, soulmate, soulmate. So I said, oh, I have to get her on my show because it's such an important topic. And I think too, whether we're talking virtual or in person, women, I serve a large audience of women. Yes, a lot of entrepreneurs, because that's the work I do with business owners, but I also have a large global audience of women on the path of self-discovery. And one of the things that I notice is, now I lost my whole train of thought, is about relationships and connection and in creating these, I don't know, I'm trying to go back to my original thought, these circles of intention. Like you and I met, we just knew, we had an instant connection. We don't try to force anything. We're like, let's see what magic comes. I decided to have her on the show. She's shown up and is participating in one of my collaborative projects. It's just a knowing, isn't it? When you meet someone that you know, all right, let's have another conversation. Let's see where this goes. But you have to be open to that.
Yeah. And trust our intuition. And it can happen virtually, just like it's happened with us. When you're looking at those little boxes, I had someone tell me that yesterday. She goes, I was in that meeting and I just kept looking at you and feel like we resonate, like I resonate with her. That happens to me all the time. And I'm sure that's happening to your listeners as well.
And that was the point that I was going to make before. Whether we're virtual or whether we're in person, women are yearning for connection, right? Whether you're a woman entrepreneur, I'm just talking about women in general, maybe because of the last few years where we feel disconnected, but the world's changing. And it goes back to what you said earlier, Leisa, that even on virtual, you can create such sacred space for whether it's a workshop, a speaking, or a gathering, or a networking circle, to create that connection. And so for anyone that thinks, oh, I'm not going to speak virtually, I only want to do, in person, I'm like, listen, you're missing a whole circle of women or clients or whatever your audience may be that is yearning for you.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just wanted to reiterate that. Don't rule out speaking virtually as well as locally. And of course, if you have a lot of experience, going out even further. I want to invite everyone again to get over to getspeakinggigsnow.com. Check out all Lisa's offerings. If this has even been a tickle in your soul of you've been thinking about this, you don't know where to turn, you don't know where to start, Lisa gave you some great opportunities, the International Speaker Network, as well as when she opens the doors to her Speaker Training Academy. That is a great place to start too. But she has some other juicy information on her website at Get Speaking Gigs Now. So we have about a minute left. Lisa, any last minute piece of wisdom you want to add to this already inspiring conversation?
Yeah, I think we've nailed it. But, as my dad used to always say, do what makes your heart sing. and trust that there's a way to make that happen. There is a way.
There's always a way. Leisa, thank you for joining me. I'm going to give her URL one more time. That's getspeakinggigsnow.com. Be sure also to grab a copy of her book while you're there. And I want to thank everyone, as always, for circling up. Until next time, choose love, choose joy, choose happiness, my friends. Blessings.
Thanks for listening to Inspired Conversations with publisher Linda Joy. Join our sacred space every Tuesday at 2 p.m. Eastern and meet leading female visionaries, empowering authors, heart-centered female entrepreneurs, coaches, and healers. Inspired Conversations with Linda Joy is a soulful venue where guests share the obstacles they've overcome, along with wisdom and lessons learned on their personal journey that led them to the transformational work they do in the world. Inspired Conversations to empower you on your path to authentic and soulful living.